There are three other types of engine starts: ground air, crossbleed, and in-flight. The first type of engine start uses a ground air source to start the engine. The ground air source is connected on the right side of the airplane. AC power from the APU or ground power must be available. In this example, a ground power cart is used. For safety reasons, engine number 1 must be started first because ground personnel and equipment are in the area of engine number 2. The APU bleed air switch must be off. This closes the APU bleed air valve and isolates the APU from the high start air pressure. Make sure the duct pressure from the ground air source is a minimum 30 psi. Use normal start procedures to start engine number 1. After engine number 1 is stabilized at idle, disconnect the external power equipment. Crossbleed air is used to start engine number 2. Let's now look at a crossbleed engine start. A crossbleed start uses bleed air from the other engine. For today, we'll use engine number 1 to start engine number 2. Make sure the engine bleed air switches are on, the APU bleed air switch is off, and the isolation valve switch is in auto. This makes sure bleed air from engine number 1 is available to start engine number 2, and the APU is isolated from the high start pressure. To start engine number 2, engine number 1's thrust must be increased until there is a minimum duct pressure of 30 psi. Before engine number 1's thrust is increased, for safety reasons, make sure there is no equipment or personnel behind the airplane. Now increase the thrust on engine number 1 until the duct pressure shows 30 psi. Engine number 2 is ready to start. Normal start procedures are used to start engine number 2. After starter cutout, decrease the thrust on engine number 1. Now, let's look at in-flight engine starts. There are two procedures used for an in-flight engine start: crossbleed and windmill. The airplane's altitude and airspeed must be checked to find the correct procedure to use. The ground start protections are not available for in-flight starts. The crossbleed start indication is shown if an in-flight crossbleed engine start is necessary. The engine start switch is put in the ground position. For a windmill engine start, there is no crossbleed start indication, and the engine start switch is put in the flight position.